What do beers, cameras, and glizzies have in common? The TDR Film Round-Up in Joshua Tree, California. Let's talk about it. Hey there, and welcome to Large Format Friday. I'm your host, Matt Marrash. If this is the first time you're stopping by the channel, there's a playlist of the 4th season that we're currently working on. If you haven't subscribed yet, Fridays are the place where we're going to be here and we're going to be chatting about something large format. So this story starts off a few months ago when I received an email from Phil and Trev over at the Darkroom asking if I wanted to join them and a whole bunch of other influential folks in the film community for a giant meetup in the middle of the desert. If you've never worked with the Darkroom before, they're an absolutely huge lab based out of San Clemente in Southern California. And having personally attended a few of their events over the years, they really know how to throw a party. So when I heard that there was going to be an event that was sponsored by the Darkroom and also hanging out with Juan at Beers and Cameras, I jumped at the opportunity. I think for a lot of folks, the last few years have been really difficult, so this opportunity with the TDR Film Roundup was perfect. Not only to get out there, but to meet new folks and kind of see what the landscape of film photography was like. And I am so glad I went. So the rough outline for this event is that there was going to be a series of photo walks, meetups, and beers and cameras events over the course of the weekend. A select group of folks was going to stay at the Thunderbird Lodge Retreat, which had a cool little model saloon in the back, where we would hang out, share tips and tricks, and just experience film photography together. I love meetups because they're a great opportunity to meet other folks doing things similar to what you are, but also approaching it differently. In this case, there was folks that were really primary Instagram photographers, some YouTube photographers, some folks that did both, and even a few folks from the industry. So a little back and forth and some logistics later, and I had my plane ticket and my large format kit packed and shipped out to San Clemente, California. Thursday overall was a relatively chill day. There was only one big thing on the docket, and that was meeting up with everybody and converging at the ranch house at the Thunderbird Lodge Retreat. So on Thursday, when I got into the airport, the Darkroom had rented out this giant van that was going to take us to and from all the different locations. And there I met up with Birgit from Lomography, as well as Britta from KEH and her partner Riley. Once we got back to the main ranch house, a few other guests joined us. We had Jason of Grainy Days and Caleb of Bad Flashes. They were camping out at the same site right behind the saloon. We also had Mr. Jason Roman, also known as Stock Easy on YouTube. We had Taylor Pendleton or Grain Check on YouTube, Mr. David Amell, Casey Kavanaugh or GX Ace on YouTube. The Darkroom went all out. They supplied us with drinks and snacks and really just a place to hang out and share our knowledge of film photography back and forth and hang out by the campfire and just get to know each other. Over the course of the weekend, I would see thousands of Joshua trees, but I was really excited to see this really cool, spindly looking one just outside the gate at the Thunderbird Lodge Retreat. The black and white film I brought with me was Ilford Delta 100, and I also brought some pretty sketchy Portra 160. This Portra 160 was something that was at the bottom of my film freezer. I didn't know I had stuff that old. I usually try to rotate through my stock, and in this case, I had no idea what to expect from this stuff. So I rated it around 100, so metering was pretty easy. Delta or Portra, I was pretty much exposing it the same. We were later on in the day, the sun was just starting to peek behind some of the mountains in the distance, and I knew it was the right time to fire off a few exposures. So a couple of seconds later, I had my warm-up shot. You know, one thing I can't state enough about Joshua Tree is just how different the light there is from what we have in Ohio. I came into this seeing some work from friends of mine who are out west, knowing that it's okay to shoot during these super bright times of day. And back by the camping area behind the saloon that we were all hanging out at, there was also just this beautiful sense of light that was coming in from behind this really giant Joshua tree. And there's this really nice chair, and I just decided, you know what, let's just throw that down there, really add something to the composition. And yes, it's not how I found it, but come on, the chair's man-made, so it was great. One of the guests there, Mr. David Amell, he brought his Linhof monorail camera, and he had never shot with it before, but was hoping to get a chance to work with it. And it just so happened he was rooming with somebody that had a little bit of large format stuff. We loaded some film in the changing tent, we hooked him up with some accessories, and he got some really successful first shots on color film to boot. So great job, David. So not only did the Darkroom take care of us with the accommodations and the snacks, we also had Trev running the barbecue with Juan helping him out, making these fantastically large kebabs. I don't even know if they can be called kebabs because they were so huge, but they did a great job there, and we all hung out by the campfire and got to know each other a little bit better. Friday morning, we got up early to head over to Bombay Beach at Salton Sea. Even though we got up at sunrise to drive out there, it still took us a couple hours to get there from the ranch. So the Bombay Beach area used to be an old resort, and there's all these art installations that are constantly changing out. There's also some really like Instagrammable locations, so we saw other photographers coming in and out, and we were just wandering around. For my first shot down at Bombay Beach, there was this really confusing kind of mirrored ball installation. So it was very geometric and everything was super reflective. So I was really happy to use a large format camera for this particular shot because I could use some of the movements on my camera to force a unique perspective, but also remove myself from the photograph. So that was kind of a fun thing. I'm really glad I had my color filters and my polarizer for this particular shot because I wanted to emphasize that drama between the sky and the beach and that hard shadow and all of that reflected light that was coming into this installation. My second shot that I set up on Bombay Beach was actually an installation that was out on the water, so I didn't have anything really long, but I threw my 355 on and I thought, you know what, let me give it a try. So I tried to place that art installation as close as I could, but also in stark contrast to that kind of deep dark blue on the horizon, but also against some of that reflected light hitting the water. I emphasized the glass on the water by knocking down the sky with a really hefty graduated neutral density filter, but also by polarizing that light in the foreground. And even though I don't usually do kind of like the man-made art installation stuff, I gave it my best shot. I was already there. I already hauled around this giant coffin's worth of gear. I might as well make something of it. I saw this building when I was coming back into town that had a Greyhound on the left-hand side. If you can check from the flag, my shutter speed was a little bit fluttery there. The wind was really blowing, but I'm just happy my camera was stable. By the time I started hiking around towards the Bombay Beach drive-in, I knew I was in the right area because we had abandoned cars, lots of rust. One thing I love about the scan is you can like read some of the text on the stickers that are just plastered across the fencing and further on in the cars. So that was kind of a fun shot. Some other guests that met up with us Friday morning were Kevin Fickling and Charlize Lynn, also known as Noctagirl on YouTube, met up with us to hang out at Bombay Beach. Kevin and I became super fast friends because he's got the large format itch, shooting a ton of film, doing plates, all the really cool stuff. So we hit it off like instantly, and he even brought the 8x10 by later on to do some portraits back at the ranch house. It was really cool. After the trip to Bombay Beach, we headed back to the ranch house to take a break, reload our film, load up on some beverages, and then get ready for the first Beers and Cameras event later that evening at Pioneer Town. Usually the Beers and Cameras events pull in a good number of folks, and pretty sure we had at least 60 to 70 folks that first night at Pioneer Town, and people were swapping stories. There was all sorts of cameras. Beers and Cameras events are legendary for the amount of Leica shooters you'll find there, and I could not believe the amount of cool M-mount cameras I saw. There's even a little bit of large format action. Birgit brought out her 4x5 and she was shooting the Lomography Lomo Graph Lock instant back and getting some cool results there. So it was really cool to see how folks interacted and used the Pioneer Town as a backdrop to their photos. After that, we all headed back to the ranch house and had yet another little bonfire cookout where we got to know each other a little bit. Now, Saturday was probably the most jam-packed day in terms of events, and I had to make it even worse for myself by trying to fit in even more. You know, why not? So even though we weren't scheduled to get up and get out until about 8:30, 9 o'clock, I wanted to head out at sunrise and try to film an LFF fieldwork episode.
Hey there, and welcome to Large Format Friday.
Okay, so the fieldwork episode didn't turn out exactly the way I wanted it to, but at least I got up, I hiked around with that big backpack, and it was a good amount of exercise before we hit the main photo meetup early that morning. So the first thing on the schedule for Saturday morning was to hike the Hidden Valley Trail at Joshua Tree National Park. Trev had kind of indicated we were going to have a lot of folks for this event, but I don't think we anticipated the 80 plus folks that did show up for that event. It was even bigger than the Beers and Cameras the night before, and it was a really cool trail, and the weather was just cooperating perfectly. The sun was just that right amount of diffuse through a partly cloudy sky, but you still had beautiful blue skies, lovely cloud action in there, and just a really pleasant hike. At this point, I'd convinced myself that maybe I should shoot less of the black and white and just shoot some color, because worst case, I can convert the color film. I've done that before in the past, and Portrait actually converts super well, but I went ahead and shot a bunch of sheets of Portra 160 along that trail. We were only there for about an hour and a half. I've been told from other folks that I was absolutely running up some of the rocks, but it didn't feel like it. I was just trying to keep pace with everybody else. There wasn't a whole lot of vertical on there unless you wanted to, and I managed to set up a few compositions with the 8x10 that I thought came out pretty well. One of the shots that really stood out to me, and I still remember vividly, was the really twisted, amazing texture of the bark on this tree that was around kind of the middle point of the trail where a lot of people were converging and kind of talking about what they had just shot. I saw this tree and I was just mesmerized. It was twisting and it was heading upward, and the light giving me just a little bit of diffusion with that hard light from the sun was perfect for this. Another favorite of mine on the Hidden Valley Trail was right at the end. The van was running, everybody was already ready to go, and I had just seen this really cool tree in the distance that I knew I wanted to get a photograph of. I saw Trev in the corner of my eye motioning, "Come on, let's go." And I said, "What about 10 minutes?" And he said, "Okay." I had a little bit of color and a little bit of black and white left, so I went ahead and exposed one Delta 100 as well as a sheet of that expired Portra 160. I think overall the color is kind of what I was going for, and just the light that's filling in from all the rocks surrounding it. I would have loved to have a little bit wider lens, but I'm still really happy with what I got out of both. After having already done 2 hikes that morning, I decided to take a break and leave my camera in the van when we went to the Noah Purifoy Museum. This was another outdoor art installation, kind of walk around exhibit. And while it was really cool, for me, the coolest part there was meeting a lot of new faces. Some folks that had driven 3, 4, 6 hours away just to hang out at this event because they too hadn't been to a photo event in years. So it was really cool to see. And I'm really glad I did because I got to connect with a bunch of folks that I might not have if I was setting up and taking a bunch of pictures, but I even saw some folks that watch LFF here at the Noah Purifoy Museum. Nathan Hernandez made the special trip up, and Nathan, thanks for bringing the doggo too. Super cute. So after hanging out all morning and afternoon in the desert, we all convened at the Joshua Tree Brewery for our second and final Beers and Cameras meetup. This was the larger of the 2 Beers and Cameras events, and we just had a whole nother bunch of folks come in. This time around, the Leicas, the Hasselblad X-Pans, the Fujifilm TX1s came out, and people were showing cameras, talking films. Another nice surprise when we were at the brewery, Linus from Cinestill, as well as a few other folks, came by and had some 400D pins and just kind of sharing the love, bringing some films. So that was really awesome. Sunday morning, before everybody headed out, we did one more sunrise at Joshua Tree National Park. I'm super glad a select few of us got up early for that because I had a chance to check out the sunrise from the park. I brought my last few sheets of Portra 160, and I managed this one where the rising sun was just barely up into my back, and it went from this really red foreground to a more dynamic golden background. Once the sun had come up, it drifted right behind a cloud. 2 photographs in literally the exact same position, but a few moments apart does such a huge thing in color. This is all the inspiration I need to start playing around with more color here on the channel. So overall, did I shoot a whole ton of pictures? Did I shoot all the film I brought? No, not even close. In fact, that's usually what I expect when attending this type of an event. Meetups are there so you can meet people. They're not photographic workshops. So whenever you're going to go to one of these type events, I always recommend tempering your expectations. Expect that you're not going to get a lot of shooting done. You're probably not going to take the best photograph of your life while you're there, but if you give it the chance, you're going to meet a lot of cool people and share a lot of common interests and make new connections. That's the best part of attending something like a meetup. If you're just there to take pictures, you're missing the point. So with all of that said, what were my overall goals with going to this event? Well, my first goal was to head out there and meet some new folks. I got to put a lot of faces to names I'd seen on the internet, and it was really just neat to see how other people approach their photography. I think one of the best benefits of both meetups and workshops aren't the actual pictures that you take, but what you can take away from other people, what you can observe, and what you can share. Another cool thing that I didn't anticipate was being there with a big old backpack and an 8x10 camera does kind of put a target on your back. People are going to watch what you're doing. For at least a dozen folks at this meetup, this was their first time looking at an 8x10 ground glass, and that is an unforgettable experience. I do feel bad for their wallets after showing them that, but I'm also really glad to have been there and to be that ambassador for the large format photographic process. Going into this, I told myself, if I get even one picture that I'm proud of, it was totally worth it. But even if I hadn't, even if all of my film somehow got like fried via x-rays or whatever, I still had a great time because I got to meet a lot of great people. I got to make some connections, and big thanks again to everybody that was a part of this event. I'm gonna have names and links to Instagrams and channels in the description below. If you like this channel, you're probably gonna love their channels even more, so go ahead and show them some love. And what was my big takeaway from this event? On top of getting a few cool pictures and meeting a lot of new folks, how do I feel about film photography after this? Well, I think the future for film photography is super, super bright. 35mm and medium format is super well represented. The average age of attendees at this event was lower than any other film photography event I'd ever seen. And that means one thing: a lot of new folks are getting into film photography and they're excited about it. That's the kind of stuff that we want to see, that encourages things that lead up to large format. And before we head out, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody who has joined in the LFF Sustaining Member program. It's monthly contributions like that that allow me to produce the show, but buy a plane ticket, send a coffin full of large format gear across the country, send it back, get the film processed, buy the stuff I need to not have Newton rings in my scans. All of that stuff really adds up, so thank you again so much. If you want to find out more about becoming an LFF Sustaining Member, you can head over to marrash.com/memberships, details in the description below. By the way, if you have any questions about the large format photographic process, you can always feel free to drop those down below in the comments. And as always, with those large format questions, you can hit me up, largeformatquestions@gmail.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we'll catch you next week for more LFF.